What's up, everybody? We are back with another episode of the Class in Session podcast. That's right, the Class in Session podcast. I am your host, Logan Taylor, with my partner in crime, my brother, my co-host, Mr. Dontay Hampton, and we have a very, very special guest for you all today. Dontay.
We have a unique, I would say, a unique individual on our podcast today. It's just crazy how this even became full circle. We actually met Dr. Cooper at a conference. It was our very first conference, so just unique for her to even be on the show today with us. But Dr. Cooper is from Monroe, North Carolina, by way of Charlotte. She's currently serving as superintendent in Kennebuck, Maine. And by the way, she's the first African American woman superintendent there as well. So we're excited. We're gonna give some small claps for that because that's pretty legendary. But we're just excited to have Dr. Cooper on our podcast today. Dr. Cooper, can you just enlighten everybody how you even got into education and just a little bit more about yourself?
Okay, certainly will. You've already mentioned I'm from Monroe, North Carolina, and I have to say this because I have to give credit to my parents who just poured into their children. There are four of us. I'm the second of four. My oldest sister is in Monroe and serves as a teacher in South Carolina. I went into education. My brother is in Durham. He is a pastor, has a church, and he's also a senior English teacher in Durham public schools. And then my younger sister, she just kind of broke the mold and she's an attorney. Had working parents, didn't come from money or anything like that. We were the family, like my dad said, I will always provide you with your needs. Now, your wants, if you want that members only jacket that costs $50, you have to work for that. I can get you a jacket, So we were that kind of family, and still to this day, we're all very, very, very close. And my parents are still there. But yes, I went into education, and let me tell you, this is a long story. I meant to tell you all that I like to talk a lot, so you're just gonna have to do this, like cut, Dr. Cooper. This podcast is limited. But my sister and I were walking to school, third grade. I was in third, she was in fifth. And my mother sold Tupperware on the side. And for those who don't know what Tupperware is, little carry-ons or containers that you put food in. And we were giving some to our teachers for Christmas. And I said to my sister as we were walking, I want to be a teacher when I grow up so I can get a lot of presents from kids at Christmas. That was my motivation. That was it. I did not deviate from that. So from third grade on, I was going to be a teacher. The reason changed. I didn't want to just get, presents, but really and truly thought that I could impact a lot of people through education, because that's just the key. That's how you change your situation. And particularly for people of color, it's important that we have people that look like us supporting our students and making sure that they get a quality education. And that's what I'm about. I want to make sure that everyone's excelling, but especially for those who have an additional, hurdle to jump, that I'm there to support those kids.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, for our audience out there, can you just explain the path you had to take to even get to a superintendent now? Like, I know, did you always know you wanted to go this higher up? Like, I know people go from like a teacher to a assistant principal or a teacher to a dean. Did you know you always want to get to this level? Because you at the top now. So.
Right. My aspiration was not to be a superintendent. Matter of fact, I said, I don't want that. The politics are great, and I was about just doing the work, whether it was, working with students directly or working with teachers. So the path I took was just a little different, and I'll tell you how I got on this path. I started as a teacher, and I had 10 years serving as a teacher. While I was teaching, I went to UNC Charlotte, and I got my master's in administration. So my real aspiration was to be a principal, and that really was going to be it for me. I wanted to be a principal. But that didn't happen. Once I got my master's in administration, I went from first base teaching, skipped second base, being a principal, and went to central office. So I served as a coordinator for teachers. And then it just turned into a 13-year stint where I became a director of employee support services, where I was providing support to teachers, where I was providing support to principals, where I was going in and out of the state recruiting teachers, overseeing substitutes. So it just became a plethora of a lot of different things. And I was really good with that. I was like, oh, I love this. You know, you got a lot of travel in here too, and you get to help people. The superintendent came to me one day, and there was a school that was experiencing some challenges. And he said, I need to make a change in the school. And so I said, oh, okay. So I went to his office, and he said to me, he said, listen, I need you to serve as principal of the school. And I'm going to tell you, it needs to be done immediately. It was like in April. So, you know, school ends in June, right? So in April. And he said, you get to make the decision at the end of the school year, whether or not you want to return to central office or you want to remain a principal. And he did say this, I'm asking you this for 3 reasons. 1, he said, you're loyal. 2, I think for your leadership. And 3, and this is really critical right here because I didn't think this to be important at the time, and it was not on my radar. He said, if you ever want to be a superintendent or an assistant superintendent, he said, no one's going to really look at you because you haven't walked the walk of serving as a principal. And I was like, okay. And so that ended up me after, you know, doing a couple of months. I said, okay, I want to serve as a principal. And I did that in 3 different schools. And when I was asked to serve as superintendent here, I called him and said, I want to take you back to a conversation we had when you said no one was going to look at me had I not served as a principal. You were absolutely right. And I thanked him. So.
Awesome. That's pretty awesome. Get in here, Lo.
I think I actually think that's amazing, Dr. Cooper, because you had people that helped you along the way to kind of give you some insight. And so what I want to ask is what is or what has been your biggest struggle with doing the job that you're doing right now?
Unfortunately, I entered this position when there was no blueprint for anyone. I entered the superintendency in a new state, a state that's inherently different from North Carolina. And I entered it during a pandemic. So there was no normal for me. This is my first year of what is normalcy. The first year, it was really challenging, but not just for me. It was challenging because no one knew how to navigate through COVID. You know, are we going to go to school? Are we going to do this remotely? Are we going to do this in a hybrid fashion? You know, there was a lot of fear. There was a lot of anxiety. There was just a lot of none of this had been done. So you're having to do this and make some decisions. And you were no one's favorite because if you chose to go to school, those who opposed that, you know, they were, you know, they voiced their concerns. Let's just say that. And if you didn't go to school, it was the same way. So it was a lot of creating some things, doing new things. And I didn't get a real sense of what the community is like or what the superintendency would be like in doing, you know, normal routine things that you would do. Fast forward to the second year, it was a little calmer because we were in school 5 days a week. This year, now I'm getting to really do some of that work that I wanted to do in year 1. I will say this, that I'm not a person, although we had challenge of COVID, to sit and rest behind COVID. Because at the end of the day, kids still They have to learn. We have to provide some services to them, whether it's instruction or whether it's in their social emotional being and those type things. So we were able to accomplish so many different things that, when I look back and I look at the list of things that we did, like how did we do that during a pandemic? And if I can do that with my team during a pandemic, there's nothing that can stop us from doing some amazing things for kids, because I'm going to always lead with kids. Kids will always be my North Star, and in working with teachers to accomplish that and administrators to accomplish that.
I think that that's awesome. It's I know with being a superintendent, you oversee a multitude of people, and I know you deal with a bunch of different personalities. You deal with different ethnicities and things of that nature. With being a superintendent, what are some best strategies for people that may be wanting to become a superintendent, or they're being a superintendent now? What have been some best strategies that you've used to be able to build relationships with students, with your administration, with your people at central office, and things of that nature?
You have to be visible. You have to be present. You have to talk to people, get to know them, listen, and you have to say, we may not always agree, but I'm listening to you. I hear you. And anytime that you're having to make decisions, giving people the why, because people will sometimes, they will listen to you and they will fall back if they understand your why. If you just come out and say no, if you don't explain what you're doing and how it's going to impact whatever it is, your strategic plan that you have for your district, your goals that you have for your district, how those decisions play into that and how it will impact students, then you're not going to build those relationships. So I think one of the first things that I did when I got here to Kennebunk, I had one-on-one meetings with people. So I met individually with my administrators. I met individually with community leaders, whether they were faith-based, whether the police department here met with those individuals, some movers and shakers, and maybe not some movers and shakers in the community, just to really get a pulse of things. And I think that's really important for anyone who's going into this this job, which is a difficult job because you're very visible, very visible. And here I am very, very visible because we don't have a minority big population here. In my school system of 600 employees, and we have about 2,500 students. We have in leadership, and when I say leadership, I mean from director to principal to teacher and to teacher assistant. There are 4 people of color. I'm the superintendent. We have 1 teacher that is African American, and we have 2 teacher assistants, one that is of Asian and then one that is African American.
Wow.
And our population of minority students in this district is probably about 5%, I think. So you have some schools where you have a couple of schools, one school with no minorities at all. So it's very, very, very limited. One of the things that I'm doing and the board has set as a charge is that we diversify our student body, by attracting families, and diversify our staff. Well, we had to put a lot of things in place even for that to happen. And you probably have another question about, well, what are some of those systems and things that you have in place? And if you do, I'll hold that quick. I'll hold my response, or I can answer now.
You can go right on into that. You can
go. Okay. So when I applied for the position, I filled out a paper application. I just thought maybe that's because, superintendent. I don't know. When I got here, we didn't have a human resources department, and we didn't have a human resources management system. So everyone was filling out paper applications. So if you're filling out paper applications, you're going to be very, very limited in people having access to those positions and things like that. Or if you're advertising in the paper and on a website that was not up to code, you're going to be, you're going to have this limited group of people who can access your information. So that was one of the first things we did. We now have a human resources department. We have a human resources management system. So we're doing everything online. And when I say this year, applications have come in from everywhere. And we're seeing more people from geographical areas. So I've hired some folks from Georgia, some folks from New York, some folks from North Carolina. We even had someone, several people apply from out of country. We're just seeing a lot of difference in geographical location, which is diversity. We're seeing a lot of people apply as far as ethnicity. So that's expanding. And so we're going to take that on the road. In addition to that, we're going to do some recruiting because the district had never done recruiting before. So we will travel to some of our HBCUs this year. That is a goal, and connect so that we can just kind of diversify our leadership, because it's important for the students who are there that they see teachers and leaders who look like them, because we have students who will never have a person of color that stand before them from their pre-K to their 12th grade experience.
Wow. Woo. That's that's a lot. That is a lot. And it's funny that you say we talk about diversity and things of that nature, Dr. Cooper. My question is with you being an African American woman in a very high position, what has been some of the myths that you've had to endure where you're like y'all can't be serious, or you're thinking like, wow, like is this because I'm an African American female, being a superintendent and things of that nature? Would have been some common myths about your job that kind of made you like scratch your head to be like, people cannot be this naive and things of that nature?
As far as we know that there are going to always be people who, feel like you don't deserve a seat at the table. And we went through a situation here where, it was going all over the country, where you had groups that were trying to recall, the board, your school board, if they felt like you were too liberal, you were too what have you. We weren't exonerated from that. And although it wasn't necessarily called out anything about me, we knew that was a part of it. Board members were being sought because I sat at the head of the seat. And of course, it was not successful. And I was proud to say that town came out and voted it down 3-1. So it was certainly a celebration that we're ready to move past this, and that the small voice that was causing this disruption about, whether or not we're teaching CRT, critical race theory, all of that was going around, it just kind of faded away because the community spoke up. Have I had things like, just in my face, I was just walking down the street and, someone said, this is a private street. I was like, I'm just 2 houses down. This is where I live. Oh, okay. Sorry. Didn't know that. That has been probably the only thing that I've experienced. Nothing really in your face. I think for me, what I have experienced is the big cultural difference of New England and the South. So in North Carolina, we're very, very, very state driven. So the state says, this is your evaluation system. The state says, this is how we're going to do this. And you go forth and you do it A or B way. Here, there is a grassroots approach. So everything is brought before people, and people have an opportunity to express their opinion. So it's not so much you can just make these decisions. And I'm also in a state where we have unions or associations. So that has been the biggest learning curve for me. Is it's not top down. There is some grassroots, so we're trying to have this happy medium here.
Love it. Come on, Dontay.
Yes, I just wanted to go back a little bit. I know you said you was doing a recruitment of teachers at one point.
Mhm.
Is there a particular trait that you used to look for? Because of course it's a podcast. Like I said, we done had teachers on here, we done had counselors, we done had principals. We even have parents on here as well, and we have parent listeners. And so maybe for somebody who's inspiring to be a teacher, because we know there's teacher burnout, of course.
Right.
Nobody wants to teach because of pay and things of that nature. So is there one quality trait that you look for as far as a teacher, or is there something that should pop out for
Yeah.
somebody inspiring to be a teacher that they might need or might not know about?
I think you know me by now. I can't say anything with one word. So I'm going to have to elaborate a little bit on that. So, first of all, you got to love kids. And number two, you got to have some energy. You got to have some showmanship, because you have to think when you're in front of students, I'm on stage and I'm performing. I'm putting on this show that I can draw kids in. And even when they're sick, they're like, I don't want to miss school because Dr. Cooper's going to do this, or she's going to do that, or she's going to do this. You have to have that fire in your belly and know that you are impacting students, because, and this, I say this all the time, and I say it to my administrators, and I say it when I have the opportunity to say it for teachers. I said, what you do will either increase or limit the opportunities of students. If we don't give them what they need when they're sitting at the table from pre-K all the way up to 12th grade, then we have limited what they will have the capacity and the ability to do post high school. And I think that's a shame. And I think it is it's our responsibility to make sure that we are increasing that. If Mary, or if Deshaun wants to do this, he has the right to choose, not because because he has the skills and the knowledge to do that. It shouldn't be he's limited to these two positions or these opportunities because we didn't give him what he needed to be successful in many things. So I look for someone who loves kids, and someone who's going to bring their A game every day and perform for kids, but give them what they need to be successful post high school.
All right. So for our audience out there, for everybody out there who's listening, we haven't heard that showmanship like perform. So I really like that. So for everybody out there who's listening, who wants to be a teacher or who wants to impact kids, make sure you have that showmanship and that fire to do that and increase. Like she said, you're either going to increase or limit our babies. So I think that's very, very important. Lo, you want to take that break real quick? Just let everybody know how they can get in touch with the podcast and everything.
Oh, yeah, real quick. So, Dr. Cooper, 1 second before we keep rolling, we got to pay some bills real quick, okay?
Okay.
All right, listen, guys. This is the Class in Session podcast. All right, I'm gonna say it a few more times just in case y'all don't understand me or hear me correctly. This is the Class in Session podcast. All right, and I need you guys to do three things for us. I need you to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. All right, I need you to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. And listen, if you feel what we're doing is adding value, or if you think, hey, I love what they're doing and it's making an impact, share it with your network, share it with your community. All right. Again, guys, this is the Class in Session podcast, and I need you to like, subscribe, and comment. All right, Dontay.
All right, Doctor. We about to heat it up a little bit. This we in the second half, so we about to heat it up. But my question would be, with a woman of your power, if there's one thing possibly you could change nationally, So this is on the, like, let's say the Department of Education calls Dr. Cooper and says, "Hey, you can change one thing nationally." What would that be?
Hmm. I would love to take the politics out of things and truly just focus on kids.
Of
I
course.
think, yeah, I really think that we really and truly look at our offerings for students and staff in the direction that we're going. It's not a secret that educationally we're falling behind some countries. Just in sheer number, if we look at China, if we look at India, the number of students that they're able to produce, and they're excelling will exceed our students because just of the sheer size of that, and we're going to fall further and further and further behind if we really don't put our money where our mouth is, and that we value education, and that we really want to make sure that we are churning out students smarter than when we receive them. So I think just really a look at what systems and processes that we have in place to support students and to ensure that they're getting the best quality education, because right now I think America's kind of falling behind. We have those who will get, and those who are not turning out with those opportunities that I addressed earlier.
Now, do you think, because like we live down south in Chattanooga, Tennessee, so me and Logan, we was talking about, it was crazy. We was talking about the grading scale in Chattanooga, and this year they just went from where 90 to 100 is an A. And so with me coaching high school basketball, I had a kid, he had, I think it was 3 or 4 84s. And so I was just telling the teacher, like, hey, this is what I'm talking about. This kid is going to have a 2.0 instead of a 3.0 and literally won't have a chance at college off of 2 points, literally. How do you feel about standardized testing? Do you agree with that, or do you prefer project-based learning? Because I'm still trying
Oh,
to
here we
understand.
go. Here we go. You don't know they call me the data queen. So
Okay.
if the data doesn't say it, it's not happening. It's not happening. But here's the thing. I do believe in a combination of ways to assess students. I do believe in standardized testing. Okay. As long as your questions are vetted, as long as your questions are based on standards, it's going to tell us what we're doing, right? It's going to tell us whether or not the kid knows this, or whether the child does not know this. It's going to tell us if the teacher is providing the instruction or the teacher is not providing the instruction. What I don't believe is using one assessment and saying that's it, because it could be on that day I'm not feeling well, so I just didn't perform well. So I think using multiple measures, whether they're formal assessments and they're informal assessments, to really gather that holistic picture as to how students are performing and what we can do to support teachers to ensure that we're doing that. I think not having that, then you're going to create a greater divide, because that information tells us who's performing, who's not. We already know that. We already know certain categories of students consistently underperform. Minus that data, everything else, how are you going to support them? They're going to get further and further behind. So I certainly believe in standardized testing, and I have people who totally disagree with me, but I've always said if the data doesn't say it, it's not happening.
Just so you know, write this down on this day. This is the first time we had somebody say they believe in standardized testing. By the way, Dr. Cooper, this is the first time. And
Yeah.
I ask people that because Logan tell you, I'm trying to get into this project-based learning. I just want
Mhm.
to know more about it. We had a school that just got built recently called Howard Connect, and they had the joint classrooms, and it was
Mhm.
pretty cool when we went in there just to check it out because they had math and science, but the kids were interacting together, like they was doing the assignment together using math and science. And so the teacher wasn't for standardized testing; she was for project based learning. But I
So
did like that as far as As far as the multiple measures, that's the way she was saying she wanted to teach, the way you can measure a student, not just by a test, but by actual assessments and by actual experience, which is pretty cool. But go ahead.
Right. Well, that's what I was saying. I said you have to use multiple ways to do that. You don't just have one assessment. But I think a formal, standardized assessment is necessary because that gives me some information. And yes, as I said, as you're doing those informal assessments or things like that, that includes your project-based learning. That includes, some of those other things that those quick checks where I'm just simply asking you, one or two questions to determine whether or not you understood, that concept. So I think it's a combination of everything. So yeah, kids do projects all the time. I think that's important because you have those kids that are more tactile than they are sitting there with a pencil and paper. It takes a variety of assessments to make that happen, but I certainly believe that standardized testing has to be a part of it.
Come on in here, love. Come on. I look like you got something to say.
No, man, I'm just taking it all in because the information and the gems that Dr. Cooper is dropping, I just hope people are not missing it. She talked about standardized testing. Like Dontay said, you are one of the first to agree with standardized testing. We've had some guests that have not agreed with standardized testing, and they think that should be one of the changes that should happen across our nation if they were to meet with the Secretary of Education and things of that nature. And I heard you talk about assessments. What are some of the assessments that you think work effectively for our babies in today's education space?
Okay. So one of the things that we're doing in our district, beyond the state tests that they take, we're building common assessments. And the way you build those common assessments, it shouldn't be a shock for kids. Shouldn't be a shock for them, right? So if I'm teaching, if I'm working with my group of teachers and we're going to teach a concept, the first thing we do is we build that assessment. What is it that we want kids to know? What is it that we expect them to be able to do? And we build our instruction, our lesson plans based on that. We teach that. We use the same verbiage when we're teaching kids so that when they get the assessment, oh, this is what we've been doing for the week. This is what we've been doing all month. This is what we've been doing, whatever the duration of that lesson or that unit is. It isn't a shock to them. And when we get that assessment back and we say, hey, 40% of our kids, they didn't understand that. So now we need to dive deeper as instructors and say, was that because the information was flawed? Was the assessment flawed? Or was the best practice that in which we provided this instruction was flawed? So, and that's what that information gives you, how to guide your teaching and to make sure that you're on target with the standard, the expectation that students are supposed to master.
Okay. All right, Dr. Cooper. I see.
Y'all don't agree with me, but that is okay.
All right, okay,
Yep.
all right. So I got a hot seat question for you. And with you being a superintendent, okay, is there a number? Is there a number? And before you answer, I really want you to think about this.
Okay.
Is there a number that you believe?
And we don't judge, by the way. Before
Yeah.
we don't.
This is a
This
non-judgment
question
zone. You know
goes
this.
for everybody who comes on here. We know with your current standing, you might can't answer, but hey, you can answer how you want to. Just throwing that out there.
Is there a number or a value that we could put on to pay educators? And I say this because this has been an ongoing problem for decades in regards to the education system pays teachers, right? And so we know that is a huge problem because they have to get multiple jobs. this plays a part in them having educator burnout and things of that nature. So the question that I want to ask, is there a number that you could put on to pay teachers to show them that you appreciate them? What do you think that number is? If there isn't one that you believe, that's fine. You know what I'm saying? But if there is, what do you think that would be?
Yeah.
Or should be, better yet?
Right. I don't think I can identify a number, because what you get paid depends on where you are geographically. So in the South, the pay isn't as high as it is here. Cost of living is higher, whatever. But I do think teachers need to be paid more than what they get. If we truly value educators, if we truly believe that instructor that stands before the teacher, or that principal who works with teachers, or those administrators in central office, who help to guide teachers. If we truly value education, then we got to value the people who are doing the work. I think about some of our other professions, whether we're talking about lawyers, or whether we're talking about doctors, or whether we're talking about, IT people, we're talking about this, that, and the other. There is no other profession where you are directly impacting the future like we are. No other profession. Hands on with kids every day, all day. And we're not paying the people who are going to impact our future working with these kids. It's just it's unbelievable. So when we say people have burnout, because educators have become, the gatekeeper for a lot of things. They're not just teachers. They're dealing with social emotional, concerns. They're guidance counselors, and in some places they're serving as, well, it just goes on. It runs the gamut of what they do. It's more than just I'm standing before you and providing instruction. And the people who are doing this work, they don't go into it for the money, because nobody's going to get rich from being a teacher. You're just not. And as you mentioned, Logan, they have to take on 2 and 3 jobs. When I was teaching, I did the same thing. I worked at Shoe Show. I worked at Big Lots and sold some shades at a kiosk in a mall and all of that kind of stuff. And it shouldn't be that way for people who are working with our most precious commodity, which is working with our students.
Did y'all hear that? She gave y'all the answer without giving y'all the answer. So my number is 80,000 is what I think they should start out at, and then go up from there. Of course, we know you got your teachers that's, they some vets. They've been in the game 20, 30 plus years, things of that nature. Of course, their salary would be higher. But I think coming in, a teacher that wants to start off teaching, wants to get into education, I think that bottom should be 80,000 and then go up from there. And of course, Dontay, he has a different point of view and things of that nature. And so I definitely want you to hear what he has to say, because I think that it's very intriguing. But for me and what I believe, if I was to meet with the Secretary of Education and he said, "Hey, Logan, what you want the salary to be for, for teachers all across our nation?" I'm telling him 80,000, and then we just work our way up from there.
For me, it'll be for me. I'm more of a systems type person. I'm more on building and securing. I will guess, because the talent pool is obviously, you don't have one, in my opinion. When it comes to getting teachers, it's like pulling teeth. Like somebody like me, I like to be around kids, but I just can't afford to be a teacher, just because of my profession of being in logistics and the way I went. I can't personally do that. But I've been a consultant. I have been a sub before. I have done that, but I couldn't be a teacher full time. But for me, I think in order to even create a talent pool to get great teachers, or like we had somebody who went from a scientist to a teacher to an assistant principal. So you have somebody that smart that finally tapped in. But I think you need things like a housing program, you need a car program, you need like a grocery program. If you got kids or whatever there may be, you need them to be able to go in Whole Foods and get 20% off. I think if you have a system in place for first time teachers and as it grows, then I think you will have that because we all know with the cost of living and inflation, you're going to need it. If you tell
Yeah.
me soon as I graduate or as soon as I get my master's degree, I can get a home, I'm pretty sure more than likely, and it's a package deal where it's a signing bonus or whatever that may be. Hey, you come to our district in Texas, we got a first home buying program, and we have an actual dealership that can help you get a car. More than likely, you're gonna have a lot of people signing up for that, especially way things are. So that's just my opinion, though. But
Yeah, and there are a lot of systems that are doing that. So there are some, relocation bonuses that they're offering. There are also, like incentives that they're putting out there to help support, get housing or those type things like that. And I think that's absolutely great. Housing here is very, very limited. You just don't have apartments and things like you do in North Carolina or in some of the other places. So even for me as a superintendent, it was hard. It was difficult for me to even get housing because they have what we call winter rentals, and then during the winter, because depending on where you are, a lot of places are shut down for the entire winter. So the homes are vacant and you can rent them. But then during the summer, that's when business picks up, and then you don't have that same home to live in because there are summer rentals that are ongoing there. So for me in this area, I had to move maybe 8 times before I solidified a home because it's just that limited as far as housing is concerned. So for us, that is something that we have to consider when we bring here. Housing is extremely expensive here. So bringing in someone young and you're starting out at 40 something $1,000, you're going to have to, have some programs and things and incentives in place to make it even, easy for them to find somewhere to stay.
yeah, I know that had to be difficult for you. 8 times you said.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's
So
that's a
yeah,
lot.
yeah. We because it was like again, you're in there for a few months, and then they have summer rental, so you got to find somewhere else to go. And because I valued this work and it was important to me, I mean, I was in a hotel for a couple of months, and I did that because there was a lot of work to be done, and I'm not a person to you know, change in midstream if I'm committed to something. So I know just from experience, and I say that not to say, oh, look what she had to go through. No, I'm saying that to say that it is a real challenge in this area and other areas as well, beyond just where I am. So that housing and those incentives that you spoke of are things that need to be considered as we're bringing teachers in now, especially when there's a shortage.
I think is I'm just grateful you shared that with us. I know I don't know for Logan, but for me, this is my first time hearing you know a superintendent struggle with housing, and I think it's unique also as well that shows you're very resilient and determined in your role. Because I know with you already being a superintendent, it's like, well, I can just go somewhere else and relocate back. And so that means you're in an uncomfortable space. Me and Logan talk about that a lot as far as being in an uncomfortable space and being able to succeed when you're uncomfortable.
Mhm.
So for our listeners out there, if you're inspiring or if the area that you're in are causing you to have to move multiple times, Dr. Cooper is a testament of that it still worked out.
Mhm.
Um, as she's doing big things up there in Kenny Buck, correct?
Kenny Bunk.
Kenny Bunk, okay.
Bunk.
But yeah, So as she teach me vocabulary right there. I never heard that word, by the way.
Oh, I was saying it wrong. So I really the district is made up of 3 towns, and it's called 3 Towns, 1 Community. So it's Arundel, Kennebunk, and Kennebunkport. Those are the 3 towns that make up the school district.
About how many people is in that city?
Oh, you're gonna put me on the spot now. I want to say of all 3. I don't have me recorded on something. Let me. You're supposed to say, let me get back to you on that one. That's what you're supposed to say.
It's that thing. We're gonna let you slide.
Let me look it up right quick.
We're gonna let you slide.
Dr. Cooper, before we probably have 1 or 2 more questions, but before we finish up, I first want to say thank you and give you your flowers, because I know it hasn't been easy, and I know that it's not easy. However, you have been equipped and called to do what you're doing for a specific reason. And so I want to give you your flowers here right now while you can still smell them, and say thank you for answering the calling. I just want to let you know that we value you and we appreciate you for everything that you're doing. And again, like, your testimony is a testament to how good the man upstairs is, as well as there's somebody out there that's watching you right now and that's listening to this, that will be listening to this podcast, and it's going to help them get through what they're going through. And so I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart, and let you know how much we appreciate you. And again, give you your flowers and let you know that we value you, we see you, and you are phenomenal and amazing.
Thank you so very much. And something that you said, like, work can be challenging, and you said the man upstairs, and I'm a firm believer in God, and God has been front and center, and without him, I could not have done this work. And I want to make sure that I say I haven't done the work solo. I have a great team now in place that support the vision and the mission that we put together. But I know God is who I go to. So in good times and in bad times, and he will continue to get me through whatever challenge I have, and I rest on him. And so I'm glad you mentioned that, and I'm not ashamed to say it.
Me neither. I ain't ashamed either. So we both in the same boat.
Right, now let's run and tell that.
Absolutely. So I definitely want to do that. Everybody that comes onto the show, we definitely want to give them their flowers, because it's not easy working in the education space. I know it's not easy being the first African-American superintendent for Kennebunk. And so I know that, I know some of the obstacles and opposition that you've had to face. Like, a regular person wouldn't be able to do it. So, I'm big on giving people their flowers and things of that nature while they can still smell them. But I want to ask, because, I can get all sentimental and stuff. But, I want to move forward, and I want to ask you, what is one piece of advice you would give to someone starting out in your position, specifically with being a African-American first female superintendent? What would be one piece of advice you would give to somebody?
Build a network. You always need to build a network. Have a group of people that you can, talk to, and not someone necessarily you report to, or people who are within your district, but someone you can bounce ideas off of. Someone who's walked the walk, and you can get some solid advice. Having a different outlet, because you need to separate sometimes the work from your personal life. So building that collegial network group of people that you can talk to, you can celebrate with, you can cry with, you can ask questions, get counsel. I think that's really important that you do that, because if you don't, you're going to lose yourself in the work, and you're not going to be the best version of yourself.
How have you been able to avoid? Um, I've never heard anybody say superintendent burnout. So I was going to say educator burnout, but how have you been able to avoid with working in administration and stuff like that? How have you been able to avoid burnout? Because I know that that's important, and we know that it's at an all-time high coming out of COVID, especially. So how have you been able to avoid that for so long?
Well, for me, as I said, when you have a great team, the work isn't as challenging as it could be. And just, I'm like everyone else. When you're new to something, you put 150% in, right? You go above and beyond because it's the learning curve that you're trying to navigate. And I did that year one. Year two, that learning curve wasn't as great. So, you could pull back from a few things, and you could release your hands being on everything with a few things, and delegating. And this year, now we can see some of those things that we had in place really taking fruition, and you see the work coming together, and the pressure isn't great because now we don't have the pressure that we once had with COVID. Now we're still practicing safety and doing all those things right to keep our students and staff safe, but it's not at the same level that it was. So my celebration is that there is some release here and some relief, because now I'm entering this new year of normalcy, and it's looking good. It's looking good. So we just want to continue to be on this journey, on this path.
Okay. All right. I'm picking up what you're laying down. So listen, guys, she said you need to release. So for those of you that are superintendents, or those of you that work in the administration, you need to release. It's very important that you release. It's very important that you delegate. If you have the vision, allow the people that work for you or work with you, allow them the opportunity to build that vision out for you. Okay. So she said release. Dontay, you got anything before we get up out of here?
I think we need to really put an asterisk by building the network. I really think that's important. And Dr. Cooper even explained that earlier when we was talking about how, the individual gave her an opportunity and said, hey, you need to be a principal. You need to walk the walk. And basically saying you can't skip the process. But in return, she was doing the work that she was able to hurdle. But it shows you still have to go through that. Like, you still have to be a principal for her to even get to where she is now. So just for everybody out there, our listeners, teachers, principals, dean of students, don't skip the work. You never know how education falls. One of my best friends, he's a head coach of a basketball program, but he was a dean of students, and he literally went back to be a PE teacher because he realized I have a more impact. My impact is more so hands-on than being a dean of students. Like, yeah, I can deal with behavior issues, but I have a more of an impact more so with PE and being a physical education teacher. So I think it's just big on building that network and talking to different individuals throughout the country. Like I said, full circle, building that network. We would have never met Dr. Cooper had we went to the conference in Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
We would have never even crossed paths. You could say that's God work. I just believe things happen for a reason. So it's just unique. And so this podcast is pretty special to me that we literally met you and you came by our booth. It's like, hey, who are you guys? And we were just like, hey, Dr. Cooper, like, wow. So it's just unique to see it full circle and to actually be talking to you again. So like Logan say, we're very appreciative that you even came on our podcast. This is for educators, but you are the first superintendent we've had on here, by the way, just like you the first African American woman superintendent. So you are the first superintendent on our podcast as well. So
well, it's certainly my pleasure. It's been my pleasure, and this has really been a great opportunity. So I just hope someday you'll bring me back. Maybe we can talk about testing. No.
Yeah. Oh, listen, you're more than welcome to come back. The door is open for you. I'm gonna roll the red carpet out for you and everything. So I really appreciate it. But before we get out of here, can you let people know how they can get in touch with you if they have any questions or they need resources or anything like that?
Right. They can contact me via my email. Do you want me just to say that what it is? It is Terri, TerriTicr 646 at gmail.com. So it's TerriTicr 646 at gmail.com.
Make sure y'all contact her. Like I said, she is a superintendent. So anybody looking to move up, relocate, we don't know what she has, but hey, it doesn't hate to get in her network, reach out to her, see what kind of position she may have open, and possibly, just bounce ideas off her. Like she said, she comes up with common assessments, things of that nature. So it wouldn't be a bad idea just to connect.
And the last piece, Dr. Cooper, is can you leave our listeners with a piece of motivation before we close out and get up out of here?
Yeah. So let your heart be your guide. Be kind to people. Respect individual differences, and just love one another. And I think if we do those things, we are a much better people. We're a much better nation, and we're doing what we're charged to do.
Y'all heard what she said. She made it very plain, simple, and she was very concise and clear. So listen, guys, trust the process, and I promise you'll get a reward for it. All right. Dr. Cooper, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I can't say thank you enough. And listen, guys, this is the Class in Session podcast. I am your host, Logan Taylor, my partner in crime, my brother, my co-host, Mr. Dontay Hampton. And in closing, like we always say, Y.B.Normal.
When you can be extraordinary.
All right, guys, we'll see you next episode. Peace.
All right. Bye-bye.